Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Dr. Morse's insight into the endocrine system function and therapeutics. Now, before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer's speaker system by default. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send your questions in at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these questions and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording. And now we can get started. I would like to introduce today's presenter, Colleen Bingham. Hello, Colleen.
Hello, Jen. How are you? Thank you all so much for being here today. It is wonderful to have you and to set some time away from your day to join us here for this awesome webinar. Looking forward to teaching you all about the endocrine system today. This is our educational webinar all about the endocrine system, and our goal today is to introduce you to this system, review its functions, and discuss some supportive herbal therapeutics for hormone health. If this is your first time with us, welcome. This is our 5th live webinar in our body systems series. So for webinar recordings of the lymphatic, urinary, digestive, and nervous systems, head over to our website and click the Learn tab, and you'll see body systems webinars. And Jen can actually add a link to that chat in your chat window, or a link to that webinar page in your chat window. We are now dividing these educational webinars in half. So I'll be covering functions and therapeutics and all of the great herbs that are in Dr. Morse's formulas today. And then in 2 weeks, on August 30th, Jen B will be discussing all the great ways Dr. Morse pairs his formulas to support specific glandular imbalances in the endocrine system. So the thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, pineal, and pancreatic glands will be the focus. And Jen, if you could please also add that registration link to the chat, y'all can just head over to that registration page and sign up. We'd love to have you join us. My name is Colleen Bingham, and I will be your guide today. I am a certified herbalist and have been walking the plant path as a passion and career for the past 13 years. I am Director of Education and Innovation here at Dr. Morse and an alumni of Dr. Morse's International School of Healing Arts. I am an educator at an Institute for Herbology in Sonoma County, California, where I live, and I'm a natural product formulator. And I'm here today with Jen B, Sarah, and Stephanie, who some of you probably know very well. They have been your support team here at Dr. Morse for the past 10 years. Jen B is our brand manager, Sarah is our customer support supervisor, and Stephanie is our operating department representative. And then there's all of you who have joined us today. The numbers keep climbing. Thank you all for coming. It's really wonderful to see so many people are interested in this information. We have alumni of the International School of Healing Arts here. We have our retail partners visiting us today. We have customers and people who might be brand new to the brand. So welcome to the Dr. Morse community. We are so glad you are here. And so what brought us all together today? This man. This is Dr. Robert Morse, and his life work has been to unlock the body's natural ability to heal by supporting its regenerative detoxification processes. For over 45 years, Dr. Morse has been educating humanity on how to remove obstructions in the physical and energetic channels connecting body, mind, and spirit through proper diet and the support of his transformative herbal supplement formulas. So Dr. Morse has been on this mission for a long time, and he really fully embodies this as not just a supplement brand, but as a lifestyle, right? Our lifestyle, our diet, our philosophies, they can all be potentially toxic, and they can really have an impact on both our physical and our spiritual level. So Dr. Morse and what we're trying to achieve here is to educate you and empower you to get to know how your body works, how these eliminatory or detoxification systems in the body are keeping you healthy or potentially holding you back. We have all the way down to a cellular level imbalances that can take place, acidosis that can build up, and discomforts that can arise as a result. And so, yes, supplements are one piece of supporting that, but it's also what are you eating and how are you perceiving the world and how is it impacting you? And so it's just really trying to get into the deep, dark places of the body and pull out all of that kind of stuck energy through all this great dietary protocols that we'll actually be discussing later on today. And just kind of your perception of life. So we hope that through this mission and our information, you'll be able to lift yourself back up to this place of self-empowerment while you become where you become the master of your own journey and can potentially wake up the God consciousness. And so Dr. Morse has other methods for you to learn. You can also watch his countless hours of YouTube videos at Robert Morse ND, and also you can take his courses at the International School of Healing Arts. So just a wealth of information, definitely worth tapping into, especially if you are new here. And so thank you, Dr. Morse, for creating the space for all of us to find our way, navigate the world of supplements and discomforts, and find kind of this grounded center in ourselves to be the best that we can be. And thank you all for joining us on this journey. So let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we move into the material. So feel free to ask questions. There is a Q&A feature. You should be able to see a little Q&A bar. You can type your questions in there, and Jen, Sarah, and Stephanie will be trying their best to keep up with all of your questions throughout this presentation. I will not be answering any questions until the very end. We're going to be reserving the last 10 minutes for any questions that might pertain to stuff that I talked about specifically. And if you did not get if your questions were not answered, you can always email us at info@dmhhc.com. If Jen could please add that email address to the chat, that would be great. Okay. All right, and so we will be emailing you in the next 24 hours with a recording of this webinar. It's going to be on that Learn tab with all the other webinars and associated blogs. There's actually a 3,000 word blog that goes with this presentation. So if you want to check that out, just look for that email in the next 24 hours. But we do encourage you to stick around until the end of this presentation. We're going to be covering some really great adaptogen recipes that you can be trying at home to help support the endocrine system. And we're also going to be revealing some coupon codes for whether you're alumni or retail or customer. You will be getting a discount code for all of the products that we talk about today. So stick around for that. Okay, great. So today's agenda, we are going to start with the fun, heady stuff, anatomy and physiology of the endocrine system, the glands, how they work, hormones and how they function, and all of their cascades and feedback loops, and the role of the endocrine system in detoxification. And then we'll jump into herbs for hormone health, and we'll specifically be focusing on adaptogens. And then if we have time, we'll talk about some additional therapeutics, which are all listed here and are very interesting. The endocrine system is fascinating and really impacted by a lot. So we can really support it in a lot of different ways. Okay, but before we jump in, I just want to take a moment to ground into the concept of the endocrine system and, wellness and herbalism. And so let's take a moment to just think about what this system means and where we are at this time of year, right? So it's late summer. This is a time for grounding, because the expansiveness we've talked about the last few months, that expansiveness of summer is kind of dissipating. We're starting to kind of bring in the harvest from our gardens, and it's time to focus on what's ahead. We have the autumn and the winter coming, and so it's almost time to become more internalized, or to start bringing ourselves back into ourselves and what we need to prepare our spaces and our minds and our bodies for the coming months. So it's the element of late summer, according to traditional Chinese medicine, is earth. So no surprises there. And so that's why we're talking about rooting into the earth. And our adaptogens, interestingly enough, many of them are root herbs. So it's the root part of the plant that are used for adaptogens. So just no surprises there. It's just really bringing you grounded and down into earth energy. I chose a picture of a banyan tree here because of the recent fires in Maui and Lahaina and how the banyan tree seems to have survived. Just wanted to send our prayers and thoughts to all the folks out there. Hope you're all working to rebuild. And So yeah, there's this great book that I love called Staying Healthy with the Seasons. This is by Elson Haas, and he basically consolidates all this traditional Chinese medicine into this book and how it impacts the seasons. And so late summer, there's kind of these imbalance or imbalance energies around this time of year. So I'm going to give you these self-assessment tools. And so listen to these different ways or energies and decide or determine like where your health is at right now. Okay, so late summer, when it's in balance, when you're in a good balanced state, you have adaptability, you have relaxation, you're able to take deep breaths, you are doing a balanced intake of nutrients, and you're feeling prepared and grounded in your faith, whatever that may be. And out of balance, you might feel like you're resisting change. There might be some substance abuse, shallow breathing, nervous eating, and apprehension. So maybe you're feeling some of both. That's okay too. But it just is kind of an indicator that something might be out of balance. And in order to bring it back into balance, it's time to assess the endocrine system and prepare our bodies for what's coming ahead. So we are now going to jump into anatomy and physiology of the system. So put on your thinking caps. The endocrine system is very vast. The more research you do into the endocrine system, the deeper the rabbit holes go. I do, of course, recommend Dr. Morse's books. The Detox Miracle Source book is great, and the endocrine system or the endocrine glandular system chapter is very helpful. It's on page 43. He starts off this chapter saying the endocrine glandular system is the most overlooked system in the body. Even though it is the master computer of your body, it tells your cells what to do and how much to function through the release of hormones like steroids, neurotransmitters, serotonin, enzymes, and the like. He goes on to say that approximately 75% of all dis-ease symptoms can be attributed to the failure of the endocrine gland system. So it's kind of this secret agent. You know, there's probably only a few times in your life where you've really felt your hormones raging, right? Puberty is a big one, obviously, but they are so instrumental in orchestrating so many different sensations. In fact, I'd say that our hormones have a lot to do with how society is set up in general, because we have things like pheromones and oxytocin, love hormones, and these are setting up structures of how we perceive each other and how we think we are communicating with one another and trying to understand each other, relationships, emotions. You know, it really is just foundational to everything is the hormones, and they really get overlooked. It's very interesting. It's maybe because it's more complex, or maybe it's just too simple to even believe. But here we are trying to break it down and understand it. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so here are the glands, the endocrine glands. So you've got 3 endocrine glands that are just hanging out in the brain. These are kind of the control center. And then everything down here in the body, these are specific glands dedicated to very specific hormone releases, okay? So up here you have the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. You'll hear about these a lot today. These are the control center. So the hypothalamus is called the command center because the hypothalamus is a little gland that rests in the brain, and we'll see a closer up picture in a little bit. And it's essentially screening your blood. It's screening your blood and seeing what kind of hormone activity is going on. And then it's telling the pituitary gland what hormones are needed or which hormones should be inhibited, right? So it's kind of turning the faucet on and on, and then the on and off. And then the pituitary gland is the conductor. So the pituitary gland is also called the master gland. It's really the controller or the puppeteer. So it's the one that's directing the hormones to specific glands. Basically from the neck down, all these glands are communicated to by the pituitary gland. It has specific hormones that it releases into the blood that get directed specifically to these different glands to tell them to release certain hormones, okay? So moving on, you also have the pineal gland, which is also considered the third eye. This is due to the location in the brain and its role in regulating circadian rhythms and sleep cycles. It also produces the hormone melatonin. And then you've got the thymus gland, which is right here. There's actually something called thymus tapping, which can help to improve immunity and support immunity. You can tap it right now. The thymus gland is responsible for a lot of the development of the immune system, and it's particularly active in childhood. It's more dormant as you age. And then you've got your thyroid gland. Jumping back up a moment, found in the neck, the thyroid gland produces hormones that regulate metabolism and energy levels. So it's the metabolic regulator, I like to call it. And then the parathyroid gland is, these are small glands that are actually located on top of the thyroid gland, and they're specific to balancing calcium levels. So the calcium conductors. And then you've got your adrenal glands. So those are right here on top of your kidneys. You've got one on top of each kidney. Adrenal, above the renal. The renal is another word for kidney. Ad is above. So the adrenals hang out right on top of the kidneys there, and they are your stress responders. And then you've got your pancreas, which is our blood sugar balancer. Let's see, it's responsible for releasing hormones like insulin and glucagon to help regulate blood sugar levels. Then you've got the gonads, the ovaries and the testes, and these are responsible for producing hormones such as progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. And they're called the life architects, or that's a name that I've ascribed to them because that's what they're doing. They're building life. Okay. So those are the glands, and here are all of the hormones that they make. Now, this is actually the short list. There's over 50 hormones that we have identified that the body produces. Because remember, these are the main hormones that are probably familiar to you, but there's also the hormones that the pineal gland releases just to stimulate the release of these hormones, okay? So if you see what I'm saying there, there's just a lot of hormones in the body, always at any given time. And they're little chemical messengers that are just moving around in the blood. So this is just gonna help you. You can refer back to this slide if you're interested in knowing which hormone comes from which gland and controls what. But I also created a short list that I think is very important to consider for those of us that are interested in detoxification, because although it's harder to draw a direct line between endocrine system glands and detoxification, once you start realizing how impactful these hormones are on all of our body systems, then you start to see the bigger picture of, oh wow, they're a huge part of orchestrating healthy detoxification in the body. So you've got thyroid hormone, produced by the thyroid, which regulates metabolism. Obviously, that's huge for detoxification. Estrogen and testosterone influence the liver and aid the breakdown and elimination of toxins. Progesterone supports a balanced estrogen to progesterone ratio, which impacts detoxification pathways in the liver, and the list goes on. So again, this is here for you to reference if you're interested in all these kind of finite details. Not anything that you have to memorize. There will not be a test, I promise. I would probably not pass it. So there you go. Okay, so now we will dive into the physiology of the system. So we've talked about the glands, where they're located in the body, some of the specific hormones that they release, but now we're going to really try to put this into practice. Like, I want to really give you the whole picture of how the endocrine system is working with the nervous system to create these responses in the body, and how the hypothalamus is sending messages and working as a feedback loop to regulate hormones in the blood. So I'm going to attempt that now, and it is, like I said, a little bit complex, but here we go. So let's start with fight or flight. And there is such a thing as the neuroendocrine system. So there's a lot of crossover between the endocrine system and the nervous system. And remember, we did have a whole week or a whole month on the nervous system last month and a whole webinar. So you can always refer back to that if you want to really get going on this chart here. But this is the breakdown of the nervous system. We aren't going to linger on this for too long, but we definitely wanted to remind you all about the sympathetic versus parasympathetic divisions of the nervous system, right? This is our autonomic nervous system. This is a division of the peripheral, the basically external parts or away from the brain parts of the nervous system. It's broken down into the sympathetic, which is our fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest response, okay? So one thing I actually didn't speak to earlier, if I were to go back a couple slides, the hypothalamus gland also controls a few features in the autonomic nervous system. So there's that crossover again. So things like involuntary body functions like heart rate and digestion are actually controlled by the hypothalamus, interestingly enough. So there's that crossover between the autonomic nervous system and the endocrine system. And the endocrine system, or sorry, the hypothalamus also is a feedback loop. It controls a feedback loop. So it's releasing or inhibiting hormones in the body. And that process basically we'll talk about later, but as it's reading the blood, it's telling the pituitary to release hormones or inhibit hormones based on what it's reading in the blood and based on what's happening in the world around us. Okay, so we are talking fight or flight, which is a sympathetic autonomic nervous system response, okay? So when a stressor is perceived, there's two things that happen simultaneously. There is both a release of adrenaline from the adrenal medulla, and then there's also the HPA axis, which is going to release cortisol, which we'll get to in a moment. So simultaneously, so you see the bear and you have that initial reaction. So right away, your adrenal glands, which are right on top of your kidneys, start to pump out adrenaline, okay? They don't need the hypothalamus to tell them to do that. They just are part of the sympathetic response. So there's another tie-in between the endocrine system and the sympathetic nervous system, is that these glands, these adrenal glands just start releasing adrenaline as soon as there is a perceived threat, okay? So now you've got adrenaline coursing through your veins. What does that look like? There's some physiological changes that are the result of adrenaline in the blood. All your blood vessels constrict and send all their blood to prioritize those essential organs like the heart and the muscles to either have you fight or flee, okay? And your eyes dilate, and your pulse and your breath quicken, and there's increased perspiration, okay? So that's all physiological changes. Now, another really important piece of this, we talked about this last month, is body system suppression. Digestion, immunity, reproductive system, and urinary system are all suppressed during fight or flight. When there's cortisol in the blood, when we've got the adrenaline in the blood, and there's the constriction of blood vessels and all the blood moving out to the exterior of the body, we're not prioritizing these essential body systems and these essential processes. That's a really big deal. And we'll get more to that later, okay? And so then you have our fight or flight with the HPA axis, okay? So this is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. We have an HPA axis, we have an HPG axis to the gonads, and we have an HPT axis to the thyroid. These are all different communication pathways where the hypothalamus is telling the pituitary gland to release a hormone to stimulate a gland in the body, okay? So when we perceive a threat, the hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland to release what is called corticotropin releasing hormone, and that stimulates the anterior pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, which tells the adrenal cortex, this is the important part, the pituitary essentially tells the adrenal cortex through a hormone messaging system to release cortisol. So this is the other stress hormone that we will be talking about quite a bit. So cortisol helps increase glucose levels in the blood and provide energy. And so, yeah, let's see. So back to this feedback loop, okay? This is another really interesting part of hormones in the blood, is that the feedback loop, I'm just making sure I'm saying the right thing here. Yeah, the feedback loop is where the hypothalamus is reading the blood. It senses that, okay, the threat is now gone. And so we can actually lower cortisol levels in the body now. So it's reading the blood and it's saying, cortisol is still pretty high. Okay, so let's tell the pituitary to tell the adrenals to start producing less cortisol, okay? But believe it or not, cortisol and all of our stress hormones, they linger in the blood for hours. It takes a long time for us to metabolize and eliminate these hormones. So even after the perceived threat is gone, it takes a while to come down from these things. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Yeah, so keep that in mind. Okay, so now we're talking HPT axis. That is the axis where the hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland to stimulate the thyroid. And then the thyroid will signal the production of T4 and T3. And then you have essentially thyroid hormone in the blood, which is helping with metabolism. So, you know, not enough T3 in the blood means like a suppression of metabolism, and then increased levels of T3 in the blood could mean more of a kind of hyperthyroid picture. Okay, and then you have the HPG axis. This is the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, and this is excreting things like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which are telling the uterus and the testes to produce things like testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So yeah, here is this close-up of the hypothalamus and pituitary doing their thing, sending these messages. So hopefully you're kind of seeing that we've got this whole messages sent, gland secretes hormone, hormone goes back to the hypothalamus, hypothalamus then communicates what needs to happen next, and it becomes this whole feedback loop, okay? So, like I said, it's a lot to think about. Hopefully you're following along. And now we're going to talk about essentially what can go wrong, which, as you can tell, there could be quite a few things. So when cortisol is pumping through the blood, and we've just talked about this with fight or flight, when immune and digestion systems are suppressed, we end up having, you know, some unfortunate disbalances or imbalances in the body. So imagine what that looks like for someone who's constantly triggering their fight or flight response. You've got immune insufficiency, you've got digestive distress, urinary imbalances, and reproductive imbalances. So these could all be signs of nervous system overwhelm and an overactive fight or flight response. And we can get like that, right? I definitely have had times where I am so easily triggering my fight or flight response, and I can feel it. It's that flush that you get. You feel your heart start beating faster, and I even will get an achiness in my adrenals when I'm really pushing myself too hard. So those are all signs that it's time to look for some support from adaptogens and look for some ways to help modulate your stress response. Maybe remove the stressor if that's possible, take a break, go do something else. Of course, we're going to talk about therapeutics in a little bit. Get yourself out of whatever situation is triggering that, or even just the awareness that, I just had a fight or flight response, and that's a little bit odd considering this isn't a life or death situation. That could be very telling of, yeah, I could assess this and try to make it better. All right, so then what else happens when you have increased cortisol in the blood and you're just kind of always triggering that prolonged fight or flight? Unfortunately, it inhibits the conversion of T4 to T3. So this can lead to a scenario where T4 is not effectively converted to T3. This disruption can result in a condition known as low T3 syndrome, characterized by decreased levels of active thyroid hormone, which leads to things like fatigue, weight gain, and cognitive impairment. Okay. And then if there's increased cortisol in the blood, how does this affect our sex hormones? In times of chronic stress, the body may prioritize the production of stress-related hormones like cortisol over sex hormones. And so then you end up kind of, you know, the whole feedback loop and all of the different HPG cascades. These are all called hormone cascades when you've got the hypothalamus, pituitary, gonadal, or adrenal axis. That's called a cascade of hormones. And so essentially, when that cascade is blocked by increased cortisol in the body, you could end up with low testosterone and low sperm quality or production in males, and then disrupted menstrual cycles or irregular ovulation in females. So maybe now we're starting to connect the dots. Oh, I have a very high stress, high stakes lifestyle. I'm triggering my fight or flight response quite a bit. And I also have noticed that I'm having a hard time getting pregnant, you know? So that's just one example of many of how just analyzing your relationship to these things and then kind of doing what you can to move past that and calm your nervous system down, calm your endocrine system down, however you can, it might be indicated for you. Okay, so put it all together, the stress response and detoxification. Here's what happens in the body, the impact of prolonged stress on detoxification, okay? So the liver, impaired liver function, digestive system. I mean, it's pretty, I think at this point you're understanding the bigger picture here, but detoxification essentially can shut down once we've got kind of this prolonged stress, high cortisol levels in the body. And keep in mind that with that feedback loop taking hours, sometimes days, to really kind of metabolize and eliminate all of that stress hormone from the body, you're already on to the next stressful situation. You're already on to the next trigger, right? So that puts more stress hormone in the blood, and then you're just kind of constantly in this loop of increased cortisol in the blood. Okay. All right. Well, that's enough of all the kind of picture of health, picture of how the endocrine system functions, how it's working physiologically, and what can go wrong. And so now let's talk about how we can support it with plants. So herbal therapeutics and Dr. Morse formulas. Oh, I didn't change this slide, for supporting the endocrine system function. All right, so we have a great list of herbal supplements that we highly recommend. They are great supportive herbs for supporting the endocrine system. Okay, so supporting that stress response, supporting the ovaries, and supporting the thyroid in however many ways. And so we're going to kind of go into those now. The first herbal category that I want to talk about, that I promised you we would talk about today, is adaptogens. Adaptogens are obviously getting a ton of hype right now, and for good reason. They are adaptogens are ancient herbs. They did definitely come into popularity more in recent years, but they've always been here, and they've always been kind of they've always had this reputation, whether they're in traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, just indigenous cultures throughout the world. These are the herbs that these people would take to help with vitality, strength, endurance, cognitive focus, all of that. So yeah, they've been around forever. And then the term adaptogen was coined in the late 1940s by Soviet scientist Nikolai Lazarev. And so yeah, they weren't always called adaptogens. That was something that came along at a certain point. Back in the 1940s, when Russia was, formerly known as the Soviet Union, there was just a huge push to get cosmonauts, chess players, military to kind of just have this increased, athleticism, energy, vitality, ability to stay awake for long periods of time, lots of focus. And so they put tons of research hours and energy into searching the globe for these herbs that contain this unique phytochemistry that would support the body in adapting to stress. That's essentially what adaptogens are. So in the years that followed after the 1940s, when the scientists started studying these herbs, is that the Russian Academy of Sciences produced over 1,500 pharmacological studies and clinical trials on adaptogenic herbs. They investigated some 4,000 plants and identified 12 herbal adaptogens, which that number just keeps increasing. And yeah, so in 1968, Lazarev's colleague, his name was Breckman, he identified key factors or traits that all adaptogens have. They need to be safe and non-toxic. They need to boost the body's energy to cope with different types of stress, including physical, chemical, and biological stressors. And they need to balance the body's functions, normalizing physiology, even when affected by stress. Okay, so let's dive into this concept a little bit more, because I love all these ideas. They sound a little superficial to me. I'm always kind of the queen of let's dive in and figure out what's happening with these phytochemicals and making them so supportive of our stress response. Okay, so first of all, our body is innately designed with a built-in protection from stress. It's called hormesis. This is a phenomenon where exposure to low levels of stressors stimulates the cells to enhance their resilience and adaptability, resulting in improved overall health and function. This is something our body already does, okay? There are already different pathways that are in the endocrine system that when there's a stressor, these different pathways kick in and they help with oxidative stress on the cell, and they help to protect the cells, something called heat shock proteins and antioxidants. So we'll get into that in a second. But basically, studies show that specific phytochemicals such as salidroside and rozavin in rhodiola, and withanolides in ashwagandha, and lignans in schizandra, they all help support this hormesis or cell resilience, okay? So the adaptogen phytochemicals can support these restorative pathways. What they do is they exert mild stress on the cell. So there's basically these phytochemicals. Remember how I've talked about saponins in past webinars? Excuse me. So saponins in past webinars, we've talked about how they're mildly irritating to the cell. So what they're doing is that just little gentle, low level stressor. And so that's basically strengthening the cell over time, okay? It's in essence, adaptogens support a beneficial training effect on the cells, enhancing their ability to manage stress and maintain balance. So pretty amazing. It's really working on a cellular level, and that's kind of what's happening. They're basically doing push-ups for cells, and they are tonic herbs. These herbs, you are not going to have you're not going to feel the effects of an adaptogen if you take it when you're having a stressful situation. It's not how it works. This is tonic herbs. This means they take a lot of time to start to really support the body in this way. So it's really, and a lot of these adaptogens are pretty good to eat. They taste really good. I like to actually source a lot of my adaptogens as powders and just mix them into the foods that I eat, so that I'm ensuring that I'm getting a certain amount of adaptogens in every meal, or at least every day, because essentially the more you add these to the body and the more you're gently kind of stimulating this mild stressor on your cells, the more you are becoming resilient to stress, okay? All right, so let's talk about some of these in detail. So there's Eleuthero. I would say if I had to pick a favorite, it's my favorite. It's mild in flavor. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go chew on an Eleuthero stick per se, but it's in the Araliaceae family. It has a lot of similar phytochemistry to the ginseng family, but it is not a ginseng. It was called Siberian ginseng for many years, but it was a misclassification because it's in a different plant family. But it has similar and yet very subdued or subtle impacts on the body compared to a ginseng. Ginsengs can be stimulating. You can actually feel it. And for more sensitive folks, you might actually not want to take them closer to bedtime. But Eleuthero is gentle. It promotes a natural energy boost without being overly stimulating. And it's taken by young and old and everyone in between. It's really one of those that has very few contraindications. It's actually growing in our herb garden here in Sonoma County, and so it can be grown all over the world in temperate zones. It does live in forested areas, and yeah, it was one of the primary herbs that they were studying during these Soviet research studies, and at a certain point it was estimated that over 3 million people in Russia were using Eleuthero regularly, including Olympic athletes and astronauts. So pretty amazing. See how it contains those lignans? We're talking about, so lignans are one of those phytochemicals that can be mildly stressing to the cell. Okay. Hoshu Wu, this is in so many of Dr. Morse's formulas. He loves this herb, and it's a really fascinating plant because it's actually a little bit, let's say, it can upset the stomach if you were to, let's say, eat the raw root. So the traditional process of making Hoshu Wu root is to actually boil it in beans, in black beans particularly. So over time, over hours, this herb is boiled with black beans, and that cooks off all of the kind of laxative, digestive upset phytochemicals and allows it to just be really incredibly grounding. It's said to be one of those most powerful extractors of earthbound qi, according to traditional Chinese medicine. And qi is the life force or vital energy that lives inside of us all. It can get diminished, and so Hoshu Wu can be a great herb for revitalizing qi. It's also considered to be said to conserve Jing, And so that's, let's see, Jing is depleted due to factors like stress, aging, and excessive lifestyles. It can lead to various health issues such as fatigue, weak bones, and premature aging. So Foti, which is another name for Hoshu Wu, is considered valuable for its potential to support and conserve Jing. And again, we list all of the different formulas that each of these herbs is in at the bottom of each of these monograph pages. So as you can see, Dr. Morse put it in many of our hormone health formulas because it is such a powerful, wonderful herb. So revisiting a few adaptogens here because we already talked about Schizandra last month when we were talking about the nervous system. It's just a wonderful herb for supporting neurological and endocrine system function. There is a specific phytochemical in Schizandra called schizandrin, and it's believed to have adaptogenic properties, obviously, helping the body to adapt to various stressors. It's thought to interact with neurotransmitters in the brain, including GABA, and so it supports a calmer state of mind, improves stress management, and it's also rich in organic acids, including citric and malic acid, which can play a role in promoting energy. And here's all of the great formulas that it is included in. It tastes really interesting. It's called the 5-flavor herb, and that's because it touches all 5 flavor receptors on the tongue, and that's considered a very balanced herb too. So that's kind of like how in Ayurveda we talk about the tridoshic formulas that are supporting all different body types, all different energies. Schizandra is one of those herbs that's just kind of great for everyone in tonic, as a tonic. So American ginseng is the Panax ginseng, Panax quinquefolius, and so these are all in the Aureliaceae family. This is the root, and of course, the older the ginseng root, the more powerful it is. Excuse me, powerful is not the right word, but the older the ginseng root, the more supportive it will be to the body. And so this is often referred to as a cooling ginseng, meaning that it has a calming and nourishing effect on the body. It's considered less stimulating than the Korean ginseng, its cousin. And the Genenosides in it interact with the HPA axis and regulate stress hormone levels, supporting balanced stress response. It's in Muscles by Nature, Male Reproductive Tonic, and Ultimate Immune Tonic. It's oftentimes the ginsengs are considered an herb for, cis male body types, just for virility and stamina and just kind of building depletion in that body type. Rhodiola is one that's really grown on me. It's found in these really high rocky environments on coastal, like wind-whipped areas of the world. And it's in certain places, if you read the blog that was released on Monday, you'll read about the Primorsky Krai. And it's a place in the very southern eastern tip of Russia that gets just like pounded with waves and wind, and it's high altitude, and it's very unimpacted by human presence. There's hardly any people living there, and it's said to have survived multiple ice ages, and rhodiola thrives there. And so you think about that from an adaptability perspective of this herb that's just so has survived the test of time, and it's living in such a harsh environment, and it's adapting to that environment and thriving there, and then taking that phytochemistry and bottling it up and taking it kind of makes sense, right? Okay, licorice is a sweet harmonizing herb, and I'd say that glycyrrhizin is obviously the most prominent phytochemical here with lots and lots of research behind it. It's considered 500 times sweeter than sucrose, but it also does not affect blood sugar levels. And it is a really common herb that athletes like to take because it helps to target exercise-induced inflammation. Ashwagandha, some would say, is the king of adaptogens. It does not stimulate. It's more of a calming adaptogen. It works on GABA receptors in the brain. If you remember when we talked neurotransmitters last month, these are calming. GABA receptors are calming neurotransmitters, so helping to calm the body down. So yeah, it doesn't make you sleepy though. It can be taken throughout the day. It supports healthy GABA levels and serotonin levels in the brain. And it's also a trophorestorative. So that means it's helping to repair damage caused by cognitive decline due to aging. And yeah, it's also, ashwagandha means horse sweat in Sanskrit. So that's just talking about like the strength and stamina of a horse. And we have actually just a pure ashwagandha tincture that we make. So that would be the best way to source the ashwagandha root. Okay, so we're going to talk sex hormone support. Let me check the time here. Great. All right, so sex hormone support, we have 2 different herbs, one for each cisgender. This is for folks with uterus, and so it helps with let's see, regulating effects of hormone levels. It's particularly helpful in relation to progesterone. So this is the berry of the vitex tree. It's in the Verbenaceae family. It's an incredibly volatile plant. It's very high in essential oils. And you can, so essentially you would take the berry and extract it. Chaste is in, Dr. Morse also, one of his favorite herbs. Look at all these formulas that it's in. In fact, this is just the short list because these are all the hormone health need state formulas that it's in, but he's got it in even more than that. But essentially, let's see if we can see where we want to read this. It's thought to interact with the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, promoting the production of LH, luteinizing hormone, while suppressing the release of follicle stimulating hormone. So this action can lead to an increased progesterone production during the second half of the menstrual cycle, potentially helping to maintain hormone balance and support overall reproductive health. And it tastes really interesting. And then there's saw palmetto. It's in the palm family. It's the whole ripe fruit. And see saw-like leaves here. And it basically is native to where Dr. Morse lives in Florida. Its active compounds are believed to support the inhibition of the enzyme 5-alpha reductase, which is responsible for converting testosterone to DHT. And by reducing DHT levels, saw palmetto may help maintain healthy balance of testosterone, supporting prostate health and addressing conditions related to male hormone imbalances. And again, another one that's very popular in Dr. Morse's formulating. Okay, and then we've got one more herb to talk about. So that was all those 2 were to support the different gonads. We've got our ovaries and our testes. Those are all releasing hormones, right? So this is all about thyroid hormone and thyroid support. So we only have 1 herb here because we are only doing 10 herbs, but I wanted to definitely put in an herb for supporting the thyroid. And actually, there's a lot of research that goes into bladderwrack. This is a type of kelp. This is actually a cousin of bladderwrack that we use. It's an Atlantic variety of the kelp species. And iodine is obviously very high in our seaweeds. It's also super high in minerals. Just kelp and seaweeds are wonderful to take just to support healthy kidneys as well and urinary function. We've talked about that in our urinary month, where we're talking about how healthy balanced minerals in the blood is going to help with maintaining homeostasis in the kidneys. So it's looking like iodine is crucial as a crucial component in the synthesis of thyroid hormones, namely T4 and T3. We've talked about those, how they play a vital role in regulating metabolism, energy production, and overall body homeostasis. And studies show that kelp iodine can support optimal thyroid function by providing the necessary raw material for thyroid hormone production. Okay, so my office, my air conditioning broke, which is why I'm like, I don't know if you can tell, I'm just profusely sweating. I'm going to pass it over to Jen to talk about food combining. We're on to other therapeutics besides our herbs.
All right, guys. So thank you very much. I'm going to try to keep this quick because we do have some questions coming in. So whether you're just starting out or you are very familiar with Dr. Morse's programs, the herbal protocols, and the diet, we do like to spend a little time on this often enough so that we make sure everybody understands. So if you're new to this, please pay attention. This will be a quick overview. And for those of you that are familiar with it, thank you so much for supporting those that are new in our community and just being very open. We really, really appreciate it because supporting each other is how we just make all this better. So what we will talk about first is your food choices and how you combine them, because it does affect your body's ability to absorb, utilize, and eliminate. And that's all very important with the endocrine system, all right? You've heard Dr. Morse mention that. It's like utilizing calcium, minerals, because a lot of your endocrine glands honestly need that. So if you don't mind, Colleen, we'll switch to the next slide and talk about the energy of foods and how your foods reflect your food's total chemistry. When you cook or process your foods, you're separating the nutrition of the food. And so that means the food is missing the synergistic properties of the whole. That's why whole foods naturally contain the constituents like these vitamins and minerals we need for utilization and digestion. So your body's receiving and experiencing the energy of that synergistic action when you eat these amazing raw, ripe, and fresh fruits and veggies. So when you separate all that, it affects how the body utilizes all of this properly. And even the digestive energy required by the body, it impacts that. So when you cook or process your foods, you're altering that chemistry and the energy of the foods. It can kind of be rendering them harmful or practically useless by the body. So you're really expending that effort, that energy to combat the effects of these cooked and processed foods because they are so acidic, when really you should be eating the foods that could be, where all that digestive energy is diverted to other areas of the body that are needed for cleansing and rebuilding. So just think of the energy that your endocrine system needs. We realized it last month with the nervous system. So the endocrine system connects all of your body systems and you're needed to function. So you want to consume the most energetic foods available. Next slide, please.
Oh, 1 second.
Oh, you're fine. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. All right, so just a quick table to just simply put how fruits are your cleansers. They are optimal for that deeper detoxification experience. Your vegetables are your builders, like for your muscle and skeletal tissue, and they work well for a more moderate detoxification experience or afterwards when you're just doing something maintenance or just continuing this lifestyle because you feel fabulous. Nuts and seeds, they're more of your builders and structural foods. They're not optimal detoxification foods since they're not cleansers, but they are an excellent addition after periods of detoxification. Next slide again. Okay, so many of you might know that we have a diet program and food combining, pyramid and chart, a number of handouts all about diet on the website. I highly recommend, if you haven't downloaded them or looked at them, take a look. Dr. Morse basically breaks this down into 3 levels. So level 1, really, when we think about it, we can understand why fruits are highly recommended in detoxification for their cleansing properties. So, you have to really focus on your diet. Okay, acidic foods contribute to your health ailments and discomfort and the dysfunction of the cells and, the body system. So level 1 is that 80-20 lifestyle, 80% raw, 20% cooked. For anyone that's new, this is a great place for you to start. Or if you're just not ready for that deeper detoxification experience, like some of you that are highly acidic, you need to take it a little more slowly. Maybe your routine or your job, something just, it's not quite ready there yet to get you to that level 2. That's for you to decide. This is a very personal choice. We want to see you succeed. So definitely see what works best for you. And then you can use that to transition to level 2. When this is a great transition stage, it's 100% raw, but you're finding that balance of fruits versus veggies, and you need to understand the fruits are your cleansers, your veggies are your builders, so you can adjust those quantities to make sure that you're getting that cleansing effect, that detoxification that you need to really get to the root cause of your issues. And then level 3, that's all for 100% raw fruits and no veggies. And that is the deeper detoxification experience, really fruit fasting, essentially. And then you would have other fasting beyond that, which, definitely want to be well experienced and understand the process of fasting before going into that. So the bottom line is the more energetic the foods are, the healthier and more vibrant you become. Next slide, please. This is pretty self-explanatory. Observe proper food combinations. You really want to just consume the foods in the natural way your body is designed to digest them. You want to keep digestive simple because you've got a lot of other things. I see the questions coming in. Everybody's got something they really want to focus on. So why not keep your digestive energy simple? Eat what you're meant to eat. That way, that energy can be diverted to some of these other problems that, you really want to focus on, whether it's thyroid, parathyroid, reproductive issues, anything like that. Really focus on, getting your diet where you need it to be. And then my last slide for the diet portion is your attitude. We talked about this in the last one, and it really is very, very important. You need to reflect on how amazing these raw foods make you feel, just the entire experience. Yes, it's a little bit of a roller coaster. It's up and down, but we're in summer, at least in this northern hemisphere here. You have an amazing variety of fruits available to you, and all their beautiful colors, and just really savor, how they taste. Feel really uplifted and energized by these foods. Energy is just another form of awareness. Okay, each food has its own awareness and individuality, and can have its own impact on your health transformation. So don't see this as a chore, see it as fun and challenging. Dig deeper, pull back. You be the judge on what you have to do at any time, and use those diet levels and food combining as your guide. Listen to your body, really take the time to connect and discover how, eating what really goes in line with all these herbs and what you can do for your health. Back to you, Colleen.
Thanks, Chip. I
Yeah.
had to turn off my camera and go wipe my face off. I was like dripping sweat.
Like you're here
Okay.
in Florida.
Yeah, I need to work on my air conditioning. Okay, so we don't have as much time as I'd hoped for the final therapeutics here, so I'll just whiz through these. And what I'm thinking is we'll download this deck and send it to you tomorrow so that you have these slides for future reference. But, I think a lot of you already are kind of hip to this endocrine disruptor list, but, see if you can identify stuff on here that you still use to this day. These might be impacting your endocrine glands and how they function. So things to remove from, your home and your surroundings. Your relationship to stress, we talked about this last time. Turns out it's not really about stress itself, it's about how you view stress. If you think stress is bad for you, according to this study, it's more likely going to kill you. So, sit with that for a moment. And then we've got EFT tapping. So this is a really great way to just kind of ground in the moment. If you feel like you're, kind of running that high stress, high stakes life, find some of these tapping spots on the body, because these are all spots, acupressure points that are supposed to help reduce stress. And they just basically bring you back into your body. So you can find them. They're here on the collarbone, next to the eye. Maybe you're already aware of some of these, but if you're ever having kind of a moment of acute stress, consider tapping it out. Okay. And we talked about this shamanic perspective, but find your community. We, evolved living in villages with each other, and, for better or worse, it was probably much healthier than the kind of societal structures that we have now, where we don't have as much support. And communal cooking releases oxytocin. Being with people, seeking people out is actually all part of our hormonal cascade and can make us feel better. So find what that is for you. Look for support within your community and ask for help. Rest and digest. Again, communal cooking. I'm a big fan of that one. But give yourself that time to drop into your sympathetic nervous system. Again, I know this go, go, go mentality. I have a kid. I have lots of things going on in my life. So I'll eat in the car a lot of times. And that is not an opportunity for rest and digest, because driving in the car is one of those moments that always triggers my fight or flight. It's not even my fault, it's just are not supposed to be in little metal objects propelling through space at 80 miles per hour. It's not safe. So no wonder it's triggering our fight or flight response, right? So try not to eat in the car. That's one thing I can definitely recommend. Sleep hygiene. Here's a great slide on all the different ways you can prepare your bedroom and your bed and your space and your mental space for a good night's sleep. And then here's these yummy adaptogen recipes. So they all have Dr. Morse tinctures in them. We have an entire need state on the website that's called Hormone Health. So you're going to find all of our hormone health supportive herbs and formulas there. And so you would just add some of those to these recipes. These are really great throughout the day to just kind of pop one in your mouth and chew it and get some energy. And then you've got your adaptogens for the day. Smoothies, obviously, we're all big fans of smoothies here at Dr. Morse. It's a great way to get your fruits and vegetables in and follow those protocols that Jen just showed. And you would, of course, use adaptogen powders and make a nice powdered blend, and then add in some of our tinctures, anything you want from the hormone health section, whatever floats your fancy, and an adaptogen golden milk. Yummy, yummy. Love this formula so much. And again, you would just kind of make this tea. You can start by making it as a paste, then adding that paste to your milk or whatever milk alternative you're using, and then add some adrenal support or endocrine daily. And we have made it to the end. It's time for questions. We only have, oh, never mind. It is 1:59. So here are the formulas that will be discounted for the next 48 hours. Endo15 is your coupon code if you are one of our customers purchasing off of our website. Otherwise, please reach out to our support staff to get your discounts. And maybe one question, Jen?
Yep, hold on. Let me see. Let's do it really quick. Okay. Goodness gracious, I flagged so many. Okay, can saw palmetto be used in conjunction with chaste berry or for female hormonal issues?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends. I mean, that's a very general question because everyone is different. And so you would want to consult with us to get more information on that, or seek out your healthcare practitioner, whether that's like a naturopath or an herbalist. But yeah, they can definitely be used in conjunction, and I believe they are in multiple Dr. Morse formulas.
Okay. And do you want one more or do we need to go?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Have you ever heard of licorice root causing insomnia or leading to any problems with that?
Oh, well, licorice root, taken in high doses over long periods of time, can actually cause high blood pressure. And so that's something that folks who already might have predisposition for that should avoid licorice root. And then what was the question? Because that's the main
Um,
contraindication.
it's just causing insomnia.
Yeah,
I
I've
mean,
never heard that.
yeah, I
But
mean,
that doesn't mean it's not a thing. I mean, I would say for every herbal therapeutic traditional use, there's going to be, 1 out of 5 people that have the adverse reaction. So it might just not be the herb for you.
yeah, I mean, I can see too, with try not to prolong this, just impacts maybe on the adrenals and how that could
Yep.
influence the circadian rhythm or something like that. Maybe, I don't know, but
Right.
yeah, I thought it was interesting because I'd never heard of it either. So I'm
Right.
put you
Yeah,
on the
we can
spot.
do that for you. Great.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time today. This, like I said, what a roller coaster that was. Hopefully you were able to take that all in. And if not, like I said, just keep an eye out for the recording tomorrow. And we are so grateful that you decided to join us today. We hope to see you again. September is actually our month off. We will not be doing any educational webinars on the body systems next month, but we might have some special guest webinars. We'll see. And then Jen, of course, in 2 weeks, will be doing her pairings and protocols webinar. So please be sure to head over to our website and register for that. And thank you all again, and be well. And this is when we turn it off. Maybe I can stop it. I'm not sure. Okay, thank you.
Oh, here, I got it, Colleen.
I
Thanks,
think
guys.
it's good.